Hari Om, welcome to the first episode of the Gurudev Podcast, His Vision, Our Mission, produced by CHYK West and brought to you by Sattvic Media. 2016 marks the birth centenary of one of the greatest spiritual luminaries of the 20th century, Pujya Gurudev Swami Chimayananji.
The body, mind, and intellect. Arjuna Vaja Arjuna said, laws of causation. Discover your identity with God. Keep the goal highest.
This podcast has three simple but momentous objectives: to know the man who sparked a movement, to understand his majestic vision, and to carry that vision so that we may chart the path that ultimately becomes our mission. Today, we speak with Rudit Amir, one of Gurudev's earliest disciples in the West. With an extraordinary life story, she shared her first exposure to Hinduism and Vedanta.
I was born in Europe. I was born in Latvia, and I became a World War refugee. Ended up in Germany in displaced persons camps for 6 years with the rest of my family, and then moved to the United States under the Refugee Relief Act. And I've been here ever since. Somebody sent me a poem. It happened to be by Rabindranath Tagore. And I think that person thought that he was sending me a love poem. I was just a teenager then, and somebody sent me a love poem. And I read that, and I said, there's more than just worldly love here. There's something more. So I went to the library, and I looked up Tagore and got some of his books and started reading. And pretty soon I was led to little paperback editions of the Upanishads and started reading them. And all of this happened when I was about 16. And I still have the little Upanishad paperback, which was my first reading of the Upanishads. I bought it for something like 75 cents, and it had no commentary, just the main Upanishads, like 4 main Upanishads were in there. So ever since then, I had my antennas up, wanted to meet my guru. I met some Vedanta teachers in New York when I was finishing up on my studies there in New York City, and I went to the Vedanta Ramakrishna Center and actually met Swami Nikhilananda over there and heard him. As I said, I kept my antennas up. So eventually I moved to the West Coast, and it just so happened that after I got married and we had a little apartment in San Francisco, we befriended some Indians who were living in that same apartment house, and it just so happened one day one of them said, there's a famous Swami from India visiting, and he's giving a lecture tomorrow night. And he's famous because he talks about the ancient wisdom in very modern terms, and you got to hear him. I said, oh, of course, yeah, I'll go. And so I went along with a host of other young Indian folks, and it just so happened that the hotel where he was giving his lecture was about 2 blocks from my home. So to me, that proved, as I learned later, that when the seeker is ready, the guru appears. In this case, he appeared 2 blocks from my house. So I was very lucky. So that's how it began in '66. It was his first yajna tour. He had been in San Francisco the year before for his first visit, but those were just introductory talks, and these were his first yajnas.
Can you describe the moment you met Gurudev? How did you know that he was your guru?
Some people say when they first met their guru, there was lightning striking and dramatic things happened, or they saw the guru the night before in a dream or something like that. It wasn't like that. It wasn't very dramatic, but I sat down and started listening, and I never stopped going to hear him. That was the beginning.
Interestingly, Gurudev's introductory topic during his lecture series in San Francisco was not on a subtle text that fed the intellect. Instead, he spoke on chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga of Devotion. But why did he take this particular text?
Why for him or why for me?
For both?
I see. Well, I think for him, as I understand it, I think he needed to show us that it's not all just in the head, that unless you open your heart, you can't really absorb the knowledge. Because there are plenty of Vedantins who are brainy people and know the scriptures inside out, but unless their hearts have been opened, they're just pundits. They're dry. They're not really spiritual people.
Gurudev's initial lectures in India focused on the deteriorating state of Hindu culture in his beloved country. But did he have to alter his message when speaking to an overwhelmingly Western audience in the U.S.?
Well, those early years when he came, this was in San Francisco. This was the capital of hippie life. Mm-hmm. So he spent a lot of time talking to people about what is the best and purest way to enlightenment rather than some other agent. Mm-hmm. And he even gave a series of lectures in Haight-Ashbury, which of course was the very center of all hippie life. And it was very interesting because the people there really needed to hear it. Now, whether there were any who heard in depth, I know of several who did, who from every indication, when you looked at them, the way they were, the way they dressed, they were hippies. Mm-hmm. They became devotees of Swamiji. So that's how it started. And in those early years, they were all Westerners who were in the audience. The only Indians, there were a smattering starting a few years after that initial lecture series, but very few in the beginning. The only Indians we saw were the ones who accompanied him there usually were some who came along to help with cooking and so on. Mm. And so he was talking to Westerners, and I remember the day that he said, "Now we'll introduce you to something new." And it was the Guru Stotram, and we got our little sheets of paper with the Sanskrit and the English transliteration, and he explained to us what it was all about and why, and so that's where it began. But before then, there was none of that. I mean, what the mission is today, it's so vastly different from the very beginning, because the orientation then was really toward the Westerner, because that's the audience he had. And then slowly, as more Indians joined, and then for him it became also some of his goal, as Swami Tejamananda has so beautifully explained. He said Gurudev really had two main thrusts in the way in his teaching. He wanted to bring people to pure Vedanta, so, the path toward enlightenment, and the other one was to bring the Hindu back to Hinduism, to the rich Indian culture. And that also happened. That second thrust also very much happened in the United States, and elsewhere outside of India, because he saw so many Indians becoming westernized and adopting the values of the Western world, which were pretty much not in concert with the Indian values and all the rich heritage of India. And so he has succeeded in that brilliantly, because when you see what's happened with Balvihars and with Yuva Kendra and CHYKs and now Yuvavirs and so on, it's amazing.
In Ruditji, Gurudev would often state that his first goal in India was to convert Hindus to Hinduism. Now, I understand that you were raised as a Protestant Christian. At any point during his first visit to the U.S., did he ever urge you or other students to abandon their religion and accept Hinduism?
No, and for him, he made it very clear and I know that some of this is published also. For many people who are Indians, Hinduism and Vedanta are all the same. But for many Westerners, such as myself, as an example, they're two different things. They're related, but they're different. And Swamiji himself has explained that. He says Vedanta is the philosophic aspect of Hinduism, and Hinduism is the religion. So Hinduism entails all the rituals and all the celebrations that go along with it to fill the daily life with a spiritual essence. And Vedanta is like the esoteric, the inner aspect of the religion. And for a Westerner, especially for someone like me, it's I can't speak for all Westerners, but I can speak for myself that it's the essence, that Vedantic aspect, the pure essence of the spiritual path that I'm most interested in, and not so much in the rituals. Although I've learned to understand them and to respect them and honor them, but they're not as much a part of my life as what I would call pure Vedanta.
Imagine for a moment that you are a seeker, starved for answers to the numerous questions you have about life. And imagine that these questions are finally answered for the first time by this energetic English-speaking Swami from India. How receptive were the attendees of Gurudev's talks?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I think for many it was similar to what I felt in Swamiji, is that he explained things so thoroughly that you began to understand where you fit in the universe in the scheme of things. And I remember so well in the early lectures, I would be listening so intently, and a question would pop in my mind and as he was talking, and minutes later he would answer it. And again, the next day the same thing happened, and the next day the same thing happened. And then other people said, "Oh, it's happening to me too." So, we have attributed that to him being able to read our minds, but when we once asked him about it, he said, well, it's just because I explained everything so logically that it's very logical that question would come next, and that's the one I would answer. So right. Who knows? It may be a combination of both.
And now, let's take a break to learn about YEP 2016. When we come back, we hear from Rudit Ji about some of Chinmaya Mission's publications that she edited. Mananam, Wanderings in the Himalayas, and this one book called Self-Unfoldment. Are you searching for a higher purpose of living? Do you want to be part of a team working for self-development? Well, look no further than the Youth Empowerment Program, a unique value-based leadership program for dynamic youth. And to tell you more about this program, here's my good friend from CHYK Dallas, Ambika Chirvu. So Ambika, why should our Yuva Kendra members attend the program?
See, it's a 2-month course, but it's really a 1-year course followed by a lot of growth afterwards. And for me, the biggest thing I got was the clarity and discipline that I've always wanted, as well as this desire just to learn Vedanta. I think I had it before, but it wasn't until YEP where we had all these acharyas in this controlled incubator environment where I got that urge to know more and to learn more and to finally see change in myself, walk the talk, right? And so that's really what I think was the initial spark. And then through the year, because there's service and seva, I really started, hey, like this works. Like it's just chipping at yourself and at just self-discipline every day and reading. And so all of that together was, and it's still like I see the effects now. It just kind of has been snowballing into what I've just always wanted to do and study.
So there you have it. The course is from June 6th to July 27th at Chinmaya Mangalam. The application deadline is on May 15th, so you have about a week to apply. Apply at chykwest.com/yep and check out their FAQ page for all the answers to all the questions you have. Mananam, Sanskrit for reflection upon the truth. It is one of the trademark publications of Chinmaya Mission West. A periodic collection of Vedantic philosophy and inquiry, Mananam was one of the first products of Gurudev's followers in the West. And a driving force behind this magazine was Rudit Amir. But it didn't come without some challenges.
So my first child was born 73, 75, yeah. I had two babies, basically, when he gave me the job of starting Mananam.
Oh, my.
It was not, we started making plans and making sketches and sorting out some details, but I really couldn't fully undertake the task until I was past a certain point of bringing the babies up to a point where I could pull some time away. But it was all done at home because I stayed home with the children as they were growing up. And so the Mananam office was my home, and that's where we had our editorial meetings, and that's where we planned each issue. And it was to spread the message of Vedanta as far and wide as possible in the Western world, especially in the Western world. When he first started playing with the idea of having a magazine, he said he gave it the name Prachar, to preach. And then as we discussed it with him, we decided that maybe it sounds too preachy. There should be something else. It wouldn't sound so preachy. And so first it was Manana, and then somebody who knew their Sanskrit said, well, there's another form of the word, Mananam, which may make a very interesting, beginning with M and ending with M. So
it's a perfect palindrome.
Yeah. Well, many years. Actually, it was the first year that he was here. I was already working as an editor in a publishing house in San Francisco, and somebody had arranged for him to go have a series of lectures at Esalen in Big Sur, a very beautiful spot high up on the coast of California, south of San Francisco. And Esalen, it was famous for all kinds of very advanced New Age thinking and philosophers and spiritually inclined people gave their seminars and lectures there. So we were there. Also, I had gone down there with others, and during a break between his talks, we were sitting on a ledge over there in the fresh air, looking at the beautiful ocean. And I said, Swamiji, I'm an editor. If you need any help with any of your books, just let me know. I'd be happy to help with that. That's my profession. And he said, give it time, no rush. So, that was the first year that I ever met him. So, I was ready to do whatever was needed. But he said, just wait, give it some time. And I don't know how many years later, whenever it happened, he said, why don't you work on, I think the first book I worked on was Wanderings in the Himalayas, and then Meditation and Life, and others followed. And then with the Self-Unfoldment, there was already a manual. There was a book already available, and the idea behind it was excellent, but I found that it was difficult to follow and a little bit hard to read. And Swamiji had said that we should have a new edition of that. It was quite a challenge. I tried two times and put it down, thinking this is impossible, and then the third time I didn't put it down. The result is the current book. So I know it's been quite a revelation how useful it's been for people. So it's very gratifying. So I felt a great responsibility to be as precise, not to make mistakes, for goodness sakes, because my guru trusted me with this. So that's how it was. His writing is it's very florid, or it's full of a lot of how shall I say, many adjectives and a lot of embellishments. That's the way he spoke. So, because so many of his books were really, the beginning of them were transcriptions of his talks, his books also ended up being that way. So that's his style. I mean, when you look at if you've had a chance maybe to see what he wrote when he was, before he was a Swami, when he was a journalist and wrote columns for a newspaper, the same style was there, was full of passion and full of many strong words and adjectives and explanations, and very, very interesting. It kind of pulls you in, because it's a very powerful use of the language.
Now, this is a tough question, but if you had to sum up Gurudev in one word, and one word only, what would that word be?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is love. Sometimes it was in the form of sternness, but it was love nevertheless, because he was always, whatever he did, he tried to, whatever he did was with the aim of helping us on the road to enlightenment. Everything. I mean, he didn't relax. The only time that I saw him a little bit out of his teacher role, just a little bit out of his teacher role, was when I was with him in his hometown in Kerala. And there he was with people like his cousins and people he'd known as a boy, and I saw a little bit of a Swamiji who wasn't just a guru, but also a human being who had relatives, And he joked with them in a way that maybe was slightly different from the way that he always joked with us also. I mean, he was full of humor.
So you saw a little glimpse of Balakrishnan Menon.
Right, exactly.
Specifically for the CHYKs, for those of us who have never met Gurudev, how do we still carry his vision forward?
I think you just have to keep the vision uppermost in your mind. There's so much emphasis being put on meditation, and yes, one should and can meditate every morning or every night or whenever you choose and do it as a regular practice. However, keeping that alertness throughout the day, which means remembering the vision, remembering what the goal is that you're going for, that's what is really the real path. You have to make it part of your life every single moment of your day, not just for 20 minutes or half an hour or an hour in the morning, whatever it may be that you set aside for your spiritual practice, your sadhana. Your sadhana is every day, every moment. And that's the best you can do, is to keep it uppermost in your mind. And if you do, your life will become better. The people around you will fare better, because you'll be a much finer person to be with than otherwise. And there's every chance that you'll be pretty successful at everything you undertake, because your mind will be focused. You will know your intention. You'll know your goal. You won't be floundering around. You won't be reacting automatically to every push and shove that comes your way.
And after listening to Ruditji's extraordinary story, we had one question left. Ruditji, you mentioned that a poem by Rabindranath Tagore led you to your Vedantic journey. What was the name of that poem?
I wish I knew. I don't even know. I mean, if I had to find it today, I don't know if I could. And it doesn't really matter. If I ever find it, I'll write you an email. But the key thing is that it became like the key to opening up this whole door toward Vedanta. It was just an amazing moment. That was the beginning, all because of Rabindranath Tagore and his beautiful poem.
Now, after some research, we did get our hands on one poem by Rabindranath Tagore. It's titled Unending Love. It goes a little something like this. I seem to have loved you in numberless forms, numberless times. In life after life, in age after age, forever. My spellbound heart has made and remade the necklace of songs that you take as a gift, wear around your neck in your many forms. In life after life, in age after age, forever. Now, this poem, Unending Love, could be the poem that Ruditji was talking about. But then again, it also may not be that poem. But then again, it doesn't matter, right? The Gurudev Podcast is produced by CHYK West and brought to you by Satvik Media. The executive producer is Swami Sarveshananji. Ramesh Chirvu is our content manager. And I'm your host, Sridhar Garra. Vande Chinmaya Sadgurum.